In a cruel western town where beauty decides fate, a woman mocked as too ugly to wed meets a cowboy who sees her soul beneath the sack. His one daring act changes everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Where are you watching from? Let's get started. The crowd laughed as the sack-covered woman stumbled through the dusty street. Her wrists were tied, and the rough cloth over her head made her breathing shallow. Men whistled, women whispered, and the sheriff just watched from his chair with a grin that could cut through bone. They called her the cursed one, the woman no man wanted, no dance hall would let in, and no preacher dared to bless. Her name was Clara, but no one remembered it anymore. "Bring her out!" shouted a voice from the back. A tall man with a scar down his jaw, his boots muddy from miles of trail dust. His name was Colton Hayes, a drifter, bounty hunter, and gambler who carried more regret than bullets. The sack moved as the woman trembled, her tied hands clutching the fabric like it could shield her from the cruelty of every stare burning through it. Too fat to dance, too ugly to wed. A drunken rancher yelled, earning another wave of laughter. Colton didn't laugh. His gaze didn't waver. He stepped forward, boots crunching against the gravel, and said quietly, "Untie her." The sheriff leaned back, smirking. "Why bother? Ain't no man brave or blind enough to look at that." Colton's hand rested on the gun at his hip. "Untie her," he repeated, his voice dropping low, slow, dangerous. Silence fell over the town square. Even the wind seemed to pause. The sheriff hesitated, then waved his hand. "Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you." As the ropes fell, Clara stood still, shaking. Her hands were red and raw. She didn't lift her head. She was used to the laughter, the disgust. For years, she had been the town's shame, her face hidden, her heart locked behind fear. Colton reached forward, his fingers brushing the rough sack. Her breath caught. "Don't," she whispered. "Please." "Why?" he asked softly. "Because once you see, you'll laugh too." But he didn't stop. His hands gripped the edge of the burlap, and with one motion, he pulled it free. The crowd gasped. Her hair tumbled down in golden waves, tangled but beautiful in the setting sun. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, yet her eyes, those deep grey eyes, held a pain too old for her years. Yes, her body was full, her cheeks flushed, her form soft, but there was a raw, quiet grace to her that silenced every mocking tongue. Colton stared at her for a long, heavy moment. Then he turned to the sheriff. "You people are blind." The sheriff snorted. "What's it to you, stranger? She's been trouble since she was born. Bad luck follows her like shadow." Colton stepped closer to Clara, lifting her chin gently with his calloused hand. "Maybe luck's been waiting for someone who can see." Tears filled her eyes, and she pulled back. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I've seen monsters. And you're not one of them." The townsfolk began to murmur. A few men laughed nervously. "Hey, Colton, you sweet on the sack, girl?" one of them jeered. Colton's eyes turned dark. He grabbed Clara's hand, laced his fingers through hers, and said loud enough for all to hear, "I'm not sweet on her. I'm marrying her." The laughter stopped. Even the horses seemed to shift uneasily. "What did you say?" the sheriff barked. Colton faced him square. "You heard me? I'll take her. You can all keep your poison words." Clara's knees nearly gave out. She shook her head in disbelief. "You can't mean that. You don't even know me." He looked at her, a faint smile tugging his lips. "Then let me." A sudden shout broke the silence. "She's cursed. The last man who touched her died." An old woman cried from the porch. Colton didn't blink. "Then I guess death's the only thing that's ever scared you all into silence." He pulled Clara closer, wrapping the torn sack around her shoulders like a shawl. The crowd parted as he led her through, their faces pale with confusion, fear, and something else, shame. As they reached the edge of town, the sun began to set behind the mountains, painting the sky with fire. Colton stopped beside his horse and turned to her. "Why'd they do that to you?" he asked. She looked down. "My father was a drunk. My mother died when I was young. I was never the kind the men looked twice at. Too big, too plain. Then one man pretended to love me just to win a bet. When I found out, I hit him. He fell, hit his head, and died. Since that day, they said I was cursed." Colton's jaw clenched. "You defended yourself. That's no curse. She smiled bitterly. Doesn't matter what's true. Out here, only stories live longer than people. He touched her cheek, rough thumb tracing her tears. Then let's write a new one. They rode until the stars lit the desert sky. When they reached an old abandoned barn, Colton dismounted and helped her down. She stumbled slightly, unused to kindness, unused to touch. Why? She asked again, voice trembling. Why me? He looked at her in the dim moonlight, his gaze steady. Because I've been broken too. I know what it's like when the world decides you're unworthy before you even speak. She searched his face for lies, but found none. The wind howled softly through the boards. Colton, she whispered, tears catching her words. If you're trying to fix me, don't. I'm not something to be mended. He stepped closer. No, you're something to be loved. And for the first time in years, she didn't flinch. The next morning, as dawn spilled across the horizon, they rode back into town. Colton walked straight to the small church and pushed open the doors. The preacher looked up, startled. I want you to marry us, Colton said. The preacher stammered. Son, I don't... Colton placed a gold coin on the table. Now. Clara stood beside him, her hands trembling, her heart racing faster than it ever had. As the vows were spoken, the same crowd gathered outside, whispering, mocking, disbelieving. But when Colton took her hand, when he looked into her eyes and said the words with steady voice, something shifted in the air. He kissed her gently, and for the first time, Clara didn't hide her face. The crowd fell silent again, not out of respect, but because something in that moment shattered the cruel little walls they'd built around their hearts. And as Colton led her out into the light, she whispered, They'll never understand. He smiled faintly. They don't have to. I do. The town would speak of it for years. The drifter who married the cursed woman, the man who lifted the sack and found a soul too pure for their world. But for Clara and Colton it didn't matter. They rode west, hand in hand, where the sun touched the horizon and no one's laughter could reach them. Because in a world that measured beauty in cruelty and worth in lies, he saw her, and that was enough to make her finally believe she was worth loving.